Well, I always have concerns when we announce timelines to our adversaries and our allies. I just think it's a pretty bad strategy. We'll see if that actually happens. Hopefully he's flexible enough that if something happens that makes that not prudent or unsafe, he wouldn't do it. But so I just generally have concerns when we announce to the world what our strategies are for removing troops or moving them anywhere for that matter.
I wanted to ask you a little bit about Senator Verno's anti-AAPI.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate that you'll be able to support that bill?
Well, as I've started, looking at it more closely, it seems a bit disjointed. I mean, there's COVID on the one hand, on the other hand, there's anti-Asian bigotry. I'm not sure what the two. I understand the connection, generally speaking, but in terms of legislation, I think it's very clumsy. I'm not one who naturally thinks we need another category of crimes, particularly there are already hate crimes. I don't, whatever the nationality or the ethnic group or the religious group or whatever type of a person is being targeted, it's all awful, it's all hateful. I will say this, what's happening with regard to Asian Americans has been frustrating to say the least and heartbreaking. I mean, we are such a wonderful multicultural nation, that is our strength, that to think that there are still Americans who don't realize we're all Americans, that where a person is born, where their citizenship is, where they grew up is what makes them that, not, their nationality or ethnicity is a factor to them, but to their Americanism it is not. I find that frustrating that we're still at a place in this country where there are people who don't grasp that. One thing I think, coming from a place like North Dakota that has a large Native American population, I think, what must they think of us? We all looked different than them at one point. So I find that very frustrating. I don't see legislation like Senator Hirono's introducing as getting to the heart of that at all. I just think it complicates, in many respects. Well, I don't want to impute any motive whatsoever, as well-intentioned as it might be, but in many cases I think it could actually be counterproductive.
On infrastructure, I know we're talking to a lot of subjects.
Yes, sure, that's fine.
Some of your colleagues met with President Biden at the White House yesterday, and I was just curious what your take on his large infrastructure proposal is. It seems like there's these efforts to redefine infrastructure.
Yes, indeed.
Where do you land on that definition?
So I think that an expanding definition of infrastructure is appropriate as technology makes it so. So we traditionally think of infrastructure as highways and bridges. And then, of course, we include ports and waterways because that's how you move products and services from one place to a market. And then, of course, in the technology age, there's broadband and the importance of that. All of that is what I think of when I think of public infrastructure or publicly supported infrastructure. But what President Biden's talking about is another, $1.5 or more trillion worth of things that aren't infrastructure, or at least shouldn't fall in this category. And the thing that bothers me probably the most about it isn't just the ever-expanding definition, or really more the use of a traditionally strongly supported bipartisan policy, perhaps the most bipartisan beyond the National Defense Authorization Act, that this chamber ever deals with. And to take that and diminish that bipartisanship by making it into this catch-all for all kinds of liberal policies, it does damage not just to infrastructure, but does damage to the relationships within the United States Congress itself. So I grieve that as much as anything. But I do stand ready to work with him and Democrats. I am the ranking member on the Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee. So, we'd love to continue the work that we started, last year on transportation infrastructure. And I'm happy to include broadband and other things. Water, obviously, an important part of that. But veering too far from that, I think, it dilutes the progress and makes it much less likely that we'll have something that we can all agree on.
You have one more for you.
Sure.
Obviously, we're all learning more information about this police involvement.
Yes.
Right? And I wanted to read you a tweet from Representative Rashida Tlaib, who yesterday said, in part, that there should be no more policing, incarceration, and militarization. It can't be reformed. I'm wondering what your reaction is to that.
Well, that's ignorance at best. Just just inappropriate, obviously. Can you imagine our communities without police? Can you imagine what our society would look like without law enforcement officers and peace officers? Now, the mistake that took place, it sounds like it was an error that admitted to by the officer. Evidently, the evidence to this point at least supports that. That's tragic beyond words, and it's understandable why some people might mistrust that in the environment that we're in today. I think the context does matter. I feel badly, obviously, for that family and certainly for the officer and her family as well. But to call Representative Tlaib's reaction an overreaction would be a disservice to just how radical that is. But we do need to have a more serious family discussion, a conversation about what to do going forward to make sure that our communities and businesses are safe, that the American dream is available for everybody, and that our police forces are adequately supported and equipped and financed so that they can do their jobs better and trained, I might add. All right, thank you.
Thank you.